Hey, Dee, do you know how much a four-leaf clover costs these days?
How much?
$5 each.
Okay.
So one of my nephew said his son could spot a four-leaf clover very easily if I wanted him to find one in my yard. And I says, oh, he can't find one that fast. I'll give him $5. So next thing I know, his sister finds one and it's like she wants in on that deal. So I says, okay, you brought me a four-leaf clover. Here's $5. And then he found one, which is the tiniest little four-leaf clover I've ever seen. And so I'm like, okay, here's another $5. I'm done now. I'm done now.
It's like some kind of weird talent.
It is a weird talent. It is a weird talent.
I hope you kept them.
Yes. Once everybody left, I carefully folded them out and pressed them. And I'm going to have to do something with them because I've got quite a bit invested in them.
You do. I think a blog post, maybe at least.
Perhaps.
Right?
Perhaps.
Excellent. Shall we start the show?
Please do.
Welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on, well, I used to garden on 7.5 acres, but 2.5 of them are burned up. So I garden on 5 acres out in the country.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet, about a third of an acre.
I don't know why I think that's funny. It's black humor. We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Hello, Dia. Apparently, we're to the laughing hysterically about the fire stage of life.
You know, you got to laugh. I mean, what else are you going to do? Laugh and water. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, there you go.
And make a list of all the stuff you're going to replace because a bunch of shrubs and trees died. But my house is still here.
That's right.
And people are digging wells because guess what? When a fire that hot blows through, you lose your well too. It cracks. So they're digging wells and they're hauling away debris and we will all be okay. So what's happening in your garden?
Well, thanks for asking, Dee. My peppers are up, except for the banana peppers didn't show up, but I used some old seed. Out in the garden, I noticed peas are coming up, radishes, lettuce. So that stuff's all going. And I spent most of last week I mowed and I got ready for the big Easter egg hunt in my backyard. And by the way, the eggheads with the wheatgrass coming out of them were a huge hit.
I'm not surprised. They were adorable. The one that your nephew drew on, the bunny.
Yes.
The guy who drew for your nephew who drew and illustrated your books.
Yes. I put that on Instagram. So we'll link to those. They're so cute. And my sister, everybody like, what's this flower? What's that flower? But she really liked the Lady Jane tulips, which were in their full glory. So I've already sent her a link to Brent and Becky's bulbs, who has those. So, that was, the week in the garden. And I feel like now that Easter's behind me, it's go time. We'll talk about that later. So how about your garden?
Hey, and nobody can see you, but you got a haircut last week. I can tell.
It's shorter than I wanted.
And you got a little bit of sun. You got a little sun on your cheek.
I was outside all day Saturday.
I know. I love it. You look healthy.
I am healthy.
You look like spring. Well, first I want to say a thank you to Muck Boots who sent me boots to try, and I'm going to use them to slip on outside of my dog run. I follow a lady on Instagram, and I'll have to get her name because right now my brain's not working too good. But she was talking about how she leaves all of her gardening shoes outside in her mudroom. And I thought, I think I want to do that. So I'm going to use them for that. And I appreciate them. And I'm going to link to them in our newsletter. And they would be great for beekeepers too. So while we're talking about bees, I need to tell everyone that my bees died. No, they didn't die in the fire. They died right before the fire, which is probably for the best because they wouldn't be able to forage anyway. So I had some bees ordered and Henry's Bees was very nice and let me refund my order. And I've decided I'm not going to beekeep. So if anyone wants to buy my beekeeping stuff, I have a ton of it. So if you ever wanted to get into beekeeping and you live locally, come on. Well, send me a text.
Yeah, send me a text or
an email. And then Smart Pots, bless their hearts, because of Carol wrote them and told them about what happened to all my smart pots that burned up. They sent me a wonderful assortment, and we're going to talk more about those next week. And I want to especially thank Heather, who stopped by and set them in my driveway on her way home. And I'll also do a video soon. What else? Let's see. I planted some seeds from botanical interest that 4 friends sent me because they were sad about my garden. It was the hummingbird mix and the precious pollinators mix.
Fun.
And I put them in the upper pastures. So thank you to all my friends. And then I placed a couple. Let's see. Bill bought me a sprinkler. I've been very busy. Bill bought me a sprinkler on a stand, and I've been watering all the garden spots that don't have drip because of the fire. So I set a timer on my watch. I put it over to a certain section. I water for 20 minutes. I move it. That's been going on, but I've called Groom's Irrigation, and they're coming out on Thursday to fix it. Thank goodness, because I'm tired of moving that sprinkler. People, you should have drip irrigation. It's really nice if you live in my climate. Okay, I placed a couple of plant orders because I watched Gardener's World, Carol.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Golly.
You're so impressionable, Dee.
Oh, like you aren't. And so, just so everybody knows, I ordered Bampton verbena because I couldn't get the seeds to germinate. Probably my fault. I had too many seeds going and I didn't have time to mess with those stupid things. And then I bought Sun-Kissed Lime GM. They've been coming out with more sun-tolerant GMs, and this one I'm going to try. Kentish Bell, Kentish, like Kent, England. Kentish Bell Abutilon, which I'm going to put in one of my pots because it's small, and Agostiki Pink Pearl, which is also for pots. And then I bought Salvia Blue Bayou, which is an AAS winner, All American Selections, for the red fountains, maybe. And I bought all that from Select Seeds, which I really kind of enjoy Select Seeds. And then I ordered a couple of new salvias, which we will talk about salvias next week. And they're Mulberry Jam, Betsy's Choice, and Kisses and Wishes. And those came from Almost Eden. That's all I got.
Dee, you're a bit out of control, I'm going to have to say.
I'll get over it. I figure I deserve it. My garden burned.
You do deserve it. And I, to be honest, I haven't really gotten out there and started plant shopping for the spring. But when I do, I'll be a model of restraint. And that's what I will be, a model of restraint.
Sure you will. I'm also looking for ideas. I might run down to Prairie Wind. Prairie Wind's a native nursery, and he just opened at a new location in Purcell, which is about an hour away. I might run down there.
You might run down there. All right.
To look at, shrubs, because mine got burned up.
Yes.
Shall we go on to the quote?
I'm trying to go on to the quote.
I know you can't stop me, can you? Sorry.
Spring unlocks the flowers to paint the laughing soil. And that's by Reginald Heber.
Did you look up Reginald?
You know what? I was very busy last week. Did I mention big Easter egg hunt at my house? And so I did not look up anybody this week. So we're going to have to just fly blind and hope they're good people.
I'm sure Reginald is a great guy. His name is Reginald. How bad could he be? So our flower this week you came up with, and it's the columbine.
That's right.
Which is the native wildflower of Colorado.
It is. Now, the ones we're talking about is not the one that's native to Colorado.
No.
I looked that up, and I forget now which the species are. We're mostly talking about Aquilegia. Yeah, Aquilegia canadensis, which is a native columbine. Mm-hmm. Aquilegia vulgaris, which is a European columbine. And then there are a zillion hybrids, most of them of Aquilegia vulgaris, the European. And and we've talked about this before, I have pink tower, blue tower, and black barlow. And they call them granny's bonnets because they look like old lady bonnets from early English days.
They're cute.
So I do like them. And so I looked it up. There are 70 species of Aquilegia. We're really talking about 2. And so this is one that if one had a mind to do so, remember we talked about national collections in Great Britain?
Yes.
I wonder.
My phone went off. I put it on Do Not Disturb, but for some reason it didn't take.
I didn't
keep going.
Anyway, nobody in England has a national collection of columbine. And I think I know why.
Why? I know why, but you tell them.
Well, why do you think why?
Because they're so bad about cross-pollinating.
Oh, yeah. They're very, very promiscuous, as one might say. or actually Noel Kingsbury in his book, The Story of Flowers, that we read or talked about last week, he talked about that. They just cross-pollinate all over the place. So it would be really hard to keep strains pure.
Yeah, it'd be impossible. I watched last week's Gardener's World instead of this week.
Yeah.
And he had the National Collection of Estrania, and they have the same problem. I don't know how he has a national collection. Right now, though, the cat is over on the table tearing up all of my seed packets.
Do we need to pause for you to get the cat?
No, we just need to pause and have a Masha moment. She's a terror today. She must feel really good. You know, it's the fire made her probably not able to breathe like the rest of us, but now it's kind of all blown away. And she's just being an ornery little turkey. I'm keeping it clean, Carol. Okay, keep going.
So
back to columbines.
Back to columbine. So I did find that the select seeds, which you talked about in some of the seeds you bought there, and they have very unusual things. They have a collection of columbine called the National Collections Mix, of all things. And it's a lot of the European, a lot of the granny bonnet types, it looks like. And then Eden Brothers also has a mix of European columbine, which will be fun because you're going to end up with a mix anyway.
You are. Or they'll just die out like they do in my garden. I mean, I really can't keep them going. I can keep them going for 2 or 3 seasons, and then they just go away. And I don't know what it is, but it doesn't really matter. Keep going.
Mine just self-sow, and I scatter seed, and then they just come up, and there's 2 ways you can get columbine. You can buy them usually as potted plants here. And
here too.
A lot of the ones that are more, I'll say they're more like the Aquilegia canadensis, which has the yellow center and the red spurs. And so there's an all yellow one, and there's McKenna's mix, it's called. You can buy a lot of those as plants, or you can get seed, but most of the seed, I believe, has to be cold stratified to germinate.
I saw a whole bunch of really pretty yellow ones and blue ones at Lowe's early in the season. We're really getting kind of to the end of their season here.
Beginning of they haven't bloomed here yet.
That's interesting. So that shows a real difference in our climates. Once the tulips are done, they're kind of done, but they're so pretty.
They are pretty. You know who else has seeds for columbine?
No, I don't.
Nan Andra over at Hayfield. She has some.
Of course she does. And Nan's will be interesting, won't they?
Yeah. She has like the black barlow, and she might have a variation of pink tower. And I sent her some blue flowered ones last year because there was someone wrote me, and I think she actually saw where I had posted about these years ago and said she couldn't find the blue granny bonnets anymore.
I remember that. You saved them last fall for that lady.
I sent them all to her, and I don't know if they germinated or not, but anyway.
I told some people that I was going to send them 4 o'clocks, and then I couldn't find them. I should have made a list. But if they're out there and they want 4 o'clock seeds, I'll save you some this fall. But you need to send me an email, not just talk to me on Instagram. There's too many, too many conversations on there.
You're far too popular. So the interesting thing is now Noel Kingsbury wrote about it in The Story of Flowers.
Love this book.
And he said the interesting thing is the common name columbine is Latin for dove, but the Latin name Aquilegia recalls eagles.
I guess they kind of do look like they're winged when you look to them from the side.
Yeah.
Those little spurs probably look like wings. That makes sense.
And he was also saying, when, and he has this in the medieval section of his book, and it said at one time they were used for medicinal purposes, but they're kind of toxic. So they got dropped from the herb garden and added to the flower garden.
There were quite a few things that were toxic. I'm actually reading a series of books that are mysteries, and they were talking about digitalis.
Yeah.
And how she would brew the leaves to help her husband's heart problems.
Yeah, I bet it helped him.
Be careful.
Yeah. Yeah. And he talks about how promiscuous they are. But one thing he said, which is kind of interesting, is when the American species were discovered, then that opened up a lot of hybridization. And he said that they're using high altitude Japanese species to do some of the little miniatures.
Fun.
So, and I had a little miniature one. I had 2 miniature ones. and they've kind of disappeared.
Yeah, that's what they would do here.
But they're famous because Nan Andra wrote a book on plant combinations, and she was seeking out pictures, and I sent that one, and she used it in the book. So that, I was famous back then for a moment.
Oh, that's cool. You were famous many times.
So anyway, that's all I got on columbine. Dee, you got anything else on columbine?
No, because they don't live here very long. I love them, and periodically, like I showed them to you when I saw them at Lowe's, and you were like, "You must buy those," and I said, "No, because they won't last here. I'll kill them."
I love them.
I love them. They're beautiful, and maybe if I started them from seed, and sprinkled out the seeds, maybe eventually I could get them going in the shade. But it is not a high priority for me this year, so we're gonna.
I could guess not. I could guess that's true. So why don't you do a quote, and we'll talk about vegetables, and maybe we can come up with. Never mind. Keep going.
You normally have to be bashed about a bit by life to see the point of daffodils, sunsets, and uneventful nice days. That's by Alain de Botton. Thanks, Alain.
Well, how about thanks, Carol? Because I just put that quote in this morning when I found it.
Did you? It's perfect. It's perfect.
I thought it was perfect.
We didn't talk about my Easter, but we really don't need to. We can just say that Bill and I both had the stomach virus. And so there was no Easter this year, except on TV. It felt very 2020.
I could imagine that it did. But our vegetable is perennial kale.
Can we grow it?
And you know what? I think the answer is that you probably can grow perennial kale.
Why would I want to?
I don't know. Here's the deal. So kale is one of those vegetable plants that would overwinter in, I'll say, zone 6 or warmer. And in fact, kale doesn't like it warmer. So this is something that we should back up and say, we read about this in The Guardian, which is a British paper. And in seaside areas, especially of Great Britain, they have perennial kale that grows under harsh conditions, and they can always get some greenery out of it. So we thought,
fun,
in our ultimate wisdom,
because we've been talking about perennial vegetables for 3 weeks because of that show. My friend Karen Collier had kale that over summered because we had a summer that wasn't too hot, and she had it in just the right place, if I remember this right. And then it overwintered, and she had kale for quite a while. But again, I'm burned out on kale. Now there's a kale that Steve Owens has that is really, really tolerant of high summer temperatures. And he grew it as a decorative vegetable last year in his garden. But I got to be honest with you, it kind of smelled like hot kale when I was out there in the summertime. And I was like, that is a really cool vegetable, but I don't want it because I don't want to smell kale in my flower garden.
No, that sounds the way you describe it. Now, I will say that I did a search for perennial kale. And when you do that, there are some rather interesting seed places that come up, like, Etsy, eBay, which aren't really seed houses, but ones I hadn't heard of or where they've collected it. I read enough to know that if you've ever heard of sea kale, and we're going to talk about that in the book section, sea kale is I think synonymous with perennial kale, that it grows wild on the coastal areas of England. And then the other thing I found out is that it doesn't set seed very well. So if you want to grow perennial kale, the best way to do it is to find somebody that has it and then get a division from them or some cuttings.
Which we do not.
Yeah. No. So here we have just trashed perennial kale. I don't feel a need to grow it. I know people are going to, if they've listened to this podcast for the first time, they're going to think we are not getting useful information out of these two on the vegetable front.
Well, I mean, where else would you hear about perennial kale?
From that article
in the United States.
That article in the
United States.
Yeah, only here on the Garden Angeles. Yeah.
So it was interesting. But no, it's not going to live here. Shall we go on to our next thing? Because I love your next quote.
I'll do the quote then, since you love it. Spring is made of solid 14-karat gratitude, the reward for the long wait. Every religious tradition from the Northern Hemisphere honors some form of April Hallelujah, for this is the season of exquisite redemption, a slam-bang return to joy after a season of cold second thoughts. Barbara Kingsolver.
So I love Barbara Kingsolver. I read The Bean Trees when it first came out eons ago, and I've read everything she's ever written. And I haven't loved everything she's written, but she can certainly turn a phrase. And 14 Karat Gratitude is perfect because I have 14 Karat Gratitude.
There you go. And on the bookshelf, we have not a book by Barbara Kingsolver. That would have been too organized. We have The Flower Pot Forager, an easy guide to growing wild food at home by Stuart Ovenden. And I got this book to review, and I know you did not. And the reason why I'm thinking, sea kale. And I was like, sea kale, it's in this book. And so I think that sea kale is what they're calling perennial kale.
Perennial kale, probably so. You should send that to Ellen when you're finished with it.
I sure might send it to Ellen when I'm finished with it.
Ellen Zakos, because she's a forager. So tell us about how you're going to grow weeds in flower pots.
Well, so the question was, is this a book about growing weeds in flower pots? And the answer is
maybe.
Yes. There are some weeds to grow in flower pots. And it's an interesting concept because foraging, as you know, is going out into the wild and finding things growing. And he does have chapters on growing stinging nettle, chickweed, pink clover, sweet violets, wood sorrel, and dandelions in containers.
I have plenty of those outside in my paths.
Hops, sea kale, horseradish is one that he included in here. It actually is a pretty good book. If you want to grow some alternative things to eat and you don't have access to some of this stuff out in the wild. So he's got several different ideas. And for each one, he says, here's how to grow it. Here's how to care for it in a container. Here's how to eat it with some recipes. What wildlife might try to eat it. And then any cautions such as when to eat something.
Boil it first.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Like a lot of these things have oxalic acid in them. So you want to boil some of that off or just eat a very tiny amount. And so if you want to expand your idea of what you can grow in a container, this is a great book. If you want to just understand some things that you could forage and you have a way of identifying them properly, because foragers really do have to have good plant ID skills.
They do. And a forager asked me a question this week that I'm going to ask.
Okay. But before we go there, one other thing that he talked about.
No, it has to do with this book.
But wait a minute. One other thing he talked about.
You mentioned sweet violets.
One other thing he talked about is conservation and being careful not to over forage in an area, especially if you don't see a large population, because between just civilization taking over areas, and then if people go in and they overpick and stuff, it can kind of ruin it for everybody else. So that is the book, and it is quite interesting. So if you're interested in those kinds of foods and foraging, I think this would be a good book to get, and another way to think about foraging.
Is he from England?
He is from England.
I thought so because of the stinging nettle and the sea kale. Okay, can I ask my question now?
You can.
It has to do with the book. So, sweet violets. Are all violets, violas, pansies, everybody, are they all edible? I believe they are.
I think the flowers are all edible, but I don't think you want to just eat a bowl of flowers. I think they're nice garnish.
No, you just want to use them on, candium or whatever. Well, somebody asked me that. And I said, well, I think so, but check with some more authoritative source. And I said, and on top of that, I would be more likely to eat the little violas than I would be to eat the great big pansy flowers. Because I've got some pansies out there right now that is a big old flower.
That is a big old flower. And I've got some
I'm not eating that.
I've got some that overwintered, and they're getting to be pretty big. I will say this book is timely. And one thing I'm sure you cannot grow in a container is morel mushrooms. And 'tis the season in Indiana, especially in south of here. It's kind of coming up this way for the morel mushrooms.
Yeah.
And I found some in the garden last year. I haven't seen any this year, but I am on the look. But anyway, that is our book, The Flower Pot Forager, an easy guide to growing wild food at home. Something different and interesting for gardeners.
It is interesting. All my morels burned up this year. Oh, well. Next quote.
Yes, the next quote. Before I was going to say, yes, please do the next quote.
Winter's done and April's in the skies. Earth, look up with laughter in your eyes. Charles G.D. Roberts in April Adoration from 1896. So our dirt is about Dr. John Cho of Hawaii. And he started at the University of Hawaii and he hybridized elephant ears for a long time, like 30 years. He's now retired, but a lot of his work has come into the market, which is very exciting.
Yes, you're getting some of them, aren't you?
I already did. They're here. I got to stick them in some potting soil because they came as bulbs. And so elephant ears, I wrote a whole post about them because a company called Dutch Grown Bulbs asked me to, and I agreed to. And there's several out there. One that I'm really excited about is Blue Hawaii, which has almost blue midribs and veining. Very pretty.
Sounds pretty.
And on a dark green leaf. And also there's Royal Hawaiian Waikiki Beach, which is one that is actually Proven Winners has it, I think, and also Southern Living Plants. Maybe Proven Winners doesn't have it. Maybe it's just Southern Living Plants. Anyway, they sent me 2 plants. They're already in the pot growing. And Dr. Cho is very interesting. And if you want to learn more about him, you can check out my blog post that I wrote.
Excellent. And I just have a tiny bit of dirt. Did you know that April is Invasive Plant Pest and Disease Awareness Month, Dee?
I did not, but goodness knows we need one.
Yes. So in April, we are encouraged to look for invasive pest and plant diseases and report those to probably the Cooperative Extension Service or somebody like that. Because it does take citizen scientists like you and I, Dee, to find these things and say, over here, we found them over here.
Yes, Lucy on Lucy, I think it's Lucy's Garden Life. She's on Instagram. I could look her up really quickly. She was like 2 weeks ago, working on spotted lanternfly. Yeah, Lucy's Garden Life. Gosh, I can't believe I actually remembered that. She was working on spotted lanternfly egg sacs on our trees.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah. I know when I went to our flower and patio show earlier in March, they had a booth. I stopped by and I picked up a couple of cards that show the spotted lanternfly and something else I can't remember. And just, how do you ID these things? Because they do want to know where they're at because they are bad bugs. Bad.
They're very bad bugs. Just terrible. Terrible, terrible.
All right. So that's our dirt. I'm going to do a quote.
Cool. Let's do it to it.
I love spring anywhere, but if I could choose, I would always greet it in a garden. Ruth Stout.
One of my favorite garden writers. So much fun to read. Makes you laugh.
She's the original no-dig garden lady. She came up with it before anybody else.
Yeah, to save your aching back. That's one of her books. And she is the sister of Rex Stout, who was the famous detective novelist.
I think I knew that, but I'd probably forgotten that.
Mm-hmm. He had, I can't think of his name right now, but he's famous and he has an orchid house. Oh my goodness. If only I'd written that down. Keep going to our rabbit holes and I will look it up.
Okay, so we do not have great rabbit holes this week. As I said, I was too busy with plans and preparations for the world's greatest family Easter egg hunt. So I didn't really have time to go down too many rabbit holes last week. And, I'm just looking at I got to get back to my Lost Ladies of Garden Writing. I got to get back to this. I got to get into that. But, it's spring. I got to go outside.
Oh my gosh, it's so nice outside. Today was beautiful.
It's
okay.
Beautiful
So
here.
It was Nero Wolfe. That's the name of the detective, Nero Wolfe.
I think I knew that.
And he's famous for never leaving his house, except for maybe one book one time. And on top of that, he has He has a greenhouse just for orchids. I think that's kind of cool.
Cool.
Okay, my rabbit hole. I've been thinking a lot about salvias and how much I love them, but I don't really have a rabbit hole because between the fire and the stomach virus, I had my hands full. Next.
So, but the salvias. When we were talking before we started this, because I was driving home from Garden Club, and you said I ordered some more salvias after watching Gardener's World, and I'm just like, Dee, I don't know what to do about you.
Oh well, You'll do something in a month.
You think? Oh, I'm the model of restraint.
BS. Okay. So garden commissions. Your turn.
Okay. So you remember I bought stock flower seeds last time and I sowed 2 packets worth, and there's a lot of seed. Every dang one of them came up. 11 cents a package. And I used to be,
that's crazy.
Well, I am too good for 11 cents a package. And now I'm like, oh, maybe I need to go back and look at those seeds some more because every dang one came up.
That's cool.
So I'm going to pot those up. They need to grow a tiny bit more, and I'm going to pot some of those up. And then I sowed seeds for Flama Orange Celosia and the Sun Coral Candy Coolea seeds from All America Selections. They germinated so well. And those, I'm going to pot those on. And it's nice out. So a lot of my seedlings are going to spend days outside in the shade, and that they'll really take off. And of course, I'm going to bring them back in because I am not dumb enough to think that we're at frost for a year.
You're not. And you know what? I think we are in Oklahoma, even though we're right on the cusp of that break, but it looks like we're definitely nights in the 50s. But explain to people why you are putting those little seedlings in the shade.
Because they're not used to the full sun, and it'll burn their little foliage if I put them out in the full sun. They need to be protected, no matter how bright the light.
So if you grow your seedlings under lights, even if you have them under lights, it's not the same thing as sunlight. And so you will read in books to put them out for an hour in partial sun, but it's much better to put them in the shade.
Yes. And
it just is.
And also walking around the garden, I noticed some things. There's a lot of spirea that have some pretty good diebacks. So I've got a lot of cutting out to do of those, a few other things. And then where the bird feeder is out here, it's just really nothing's growing under it as happened. So I'm thinking I'm either going to move the bird feeder and just let a spot in the lawn be bare, or take it down for summer. I don't know, but I want to clean that mess up, and that's going to be a mess, and kind of amend that soil. And then that's where I want to plant some yellow zinnias and things up right outside this window. So there'll be bees and butterflies everywhere.
That'll be beautiful. All of my zinnias are up and doing really well. And as soon as we get the drip irrigation installed in those cut flower beds, which we were going to do today, but Bill went back to work today. And of course, things were really busy since he had been off since Thursday, sick. So we're going to finish installing the drip Nitafim irrigation. We have all the stuff. I can plant out the zinnias that I've been keeping alive. I'm at that stage where the greenhouse is starting to get hot.
Yeah.
And I did lose a couple of tomatoes because I was sick. If it gets hot, I'll need to move those outside in partial shade. And then I'm moving all of my scented pelargoniums outside. I have some in the house, some in the greenhouse, and putting them on my staging area, my theater. And then I'm still watching the shade beds to see what's alive and what burned up. The hostas are fine, by the way. So are the Indian pinks. I don't know about the Ogon spirea. It looks pretty bad. Dig up the boxwood that burned next to the garage, plant a new tree for several that burned over by my bedroom. And we hired several companies to help us start working on removing the debris from the barn and those trees that died all around it. They're going to cut them down and take them away, which that'll be a sun area. That'll be different.
Yeah, that will be.
I also hired someone to replace our split rail fence, and I'm working to get electricity back to the car barn because it ran through the barn. So it burned up, and I can't get my garden cart out of the car barn because that's where it is. Can't raise the barn doors. So that's my week in a nutshell, and keeping everything in the greenhouse alive.
You know what else I'm going to do?
What?
So Easter is March the 31st. So I kind of made a little check of what was blooming on March the 31st next year. I'm going to order a bunch of bulbs. I think I'm going to get a whole bunch of windflowers and plant them because I want to have good bloom on the 31st of March next year.
Well, you can sure do it.
So I sure am going to order some bulbs and just order them and then forget about it. And then they'll show up and like, why did I order these? Oh yeah, for Easter.
I think for me, what I would have to do is order them and then remind myself on my calendar in August that I had ordered them. So I didn't order more because I'm bad about that.
My mind's a steel trap. That won't happen to me.
You are smarter than me about stuff like that. By the way, I'm in love with my orange tulips that are blooming right now.
Oh, good.
So I've got to make sure that I have orange. I'm going to have a mix next year. that has orange tulips in it because I have yellow and orange daffodils right outside my kitchen door. And it looks better if you have a few orange tulips in there.
Very nice. Yes. So you need to make a reminder to order orange tulips.
Or just do it.
Or just do it. Speaking of just doing it, I think we just did this week's episode, probably in record time. So I want to thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review that helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
And be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites.
And please subscribe to our Substack newsletter, The Garden Angelist at Substack.com, also linked to in our show notes.
And if you want to help support us, use those affiliate links, or you can make a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or a one-time donation through PayPal. If you buy something after clicking through on those affiliate links, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing.
It was lovely chat with all of you over the garden gate this week. Bye until next time.
Bye, everybody.